Okay, everyone, we are recording.
Sorry for all the tech stuff.
Yeah, okay, and I am sorry for being. Oh, are you finished, Larissa? Is there anything else you need to say?
Nope, we are good to go. We're ready to start the meeting.
All right, great. So we will start the meeting now. I just wanted to remind you that another housekeeping item is that if you have something to say that is regarding the meeting, please do not put it in the chat box. You know, it may be done at other meetings, but not this one. So if you have something to say that's regarding the content of the meeting or something that someone else is saying, just raise your hand and you will be recognized in turn. Okay. The chat box is though for if you are having technical difficulties, maybe you can't be heard or you're having problems with audio and you want to say something, just say, you know, I'm having problems with, right, type that in, I'm having problems with my audio. And Larissa will be watching that and she will be, you know, she will help you to fix your audio. All right, so we will start the meeting. Today we have a pretty big agenda. We are going to vote on the minutes. We will then discuss our district needs statement. Today we have 3 speakers who will speak to different areas of our statement and provide more information that we can use to draft our statement. We also have a draft of, you know, the statement, mainly the education section taken from the minutes of the previous meeting, and we'll do a little review of that before we go on. And then finally, there will be reports if any of the committee members have attended a community advisory board meeting at one of the CBOs or the hospitals, or perhaps a community education council meeting this past month, they can report on it. And then after that, if we have any new or old business, we'll discuss it. And then finally, we will adjourn. Any questions? Okay, see, Thomas is here and he's going to take the minutes and also do the roll call. So the first agenda item is to vote on the previous month's minutes. That was the June minutes. And Thomas will take roll call for those minutes.
Just need a minute because I'm on my phone. It's hard for me to access things. Give me one moment, please.
Sure. Okay, so for the speakers, do you have, I know one of you sent me, Cynthia had sent me some materials that, you know, members, she sent me an information sheet that she'll be going over and you can follow along. But for the other speakers, did you have any information sheets that you wanted to share?
I didn't ask David to bring any.
Okay, no problem. If you do, it's a little bit more helpful if committee members can download it and look at it as you're talking. But if you don't, that's fine. We will take notes and ask you for more information later on, possibly.
Okay, May, are you ready for the roll call?
Yes, we are.
All right, thank you for your
Go
patience.
ahead.
All right. May Lee?
Yes.
Yes. Larissa?
Yes.
David? David Crane? Eric Diaz?
David's muted. Oh, there he
Here,
is.
I know I was struggling with Windows.
Okay.
Here, David.
Thank you, David.
Yeah.
Eric Diaz?
Yes, I abstained, right, because I wasn't in the last meeting.
Okay. Shirley Fantasy?
She did say she was going to be late.
Okay. Deborah Jeffrey Glass? Is Deborah present?
Not yet.
All right. Tatiana?
Yes.
Paul Rangel,
Yes.
Thomas Rosa, myself, yes. Heidi Schmidt
Yes.
and Ricky Wong
Here.
and Carmen Perez. Is Carmen with us?
Not yet.
All right.
I don't believe so.
Okay, that's our roll call.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, so we have all of our speakers here today, but today, why don't we start with after-school programs. So David Garza is here today. He's the president and CEO of Henry Street Settlement. They have many after-school programs, and he is going to talk about the state of after-school programs and the needs. Go ahead, David.
Great. First of all, I want to say thank you to Susan and to May for inviting me to speak and to share tonight. We've been extraordinarily busy serving the community, and it's grateful to see all of you around the Zoom screen because I know that everyone in this neighborhood works collectively to do what they can in support of the neighborhood. And there's so much going on in the human service sector, but as requested, I will try to keep the focus on after school and as it relates after school and camp services, because they really go hand in hand to round out the year. I may include, some other service aspects because they could be helpful to families, whether or not they have children as we transition from summer and, into fall. So I'll try to be as inclusive as possible, but also as efficient as possible and brief, because I know you have a very full agenda. And to answer May's question, I can certainly provide an information sheet electronically. I will email Susan and May after the meeting so it can be distributed to the board and to the community to promote the programs that we have in operation. And so I'll start with the fact that it's July 9th and the summer is really just getting underway, and that July 1st, marked the beginning of the city's fiscal year, which informs the way that, our programs are resourced at different times of the year. And I want to thank all of you, both community board members and members of city council. I know I see Gigi. I'm not sure if I see anyone from Carlina's office on the line, but for the fierce advocacy to protect programs to our youth, but also to all of the people we serve, to our youth, to adults, to seniors, because it was a very, very tough budget year, and that is an understatement. All of that advocacy did result in some restoration of funding for youth programs, and so we're really, really grateful for that. The challenge with the way that the budget was negotiated is it came very late, meaning the budget was just finalized a week ago. And so for community-based organizations to find out a week ago that whether or not they would have summer programming was very precarious. And it puts all of the community-based organizations that do this work on the Lower East Side in a very, very unfortunate position, because over the past several months, we potentially would have had to furlough staff or lay off staff, would not really have the resources to do planning, and then pivot, when the budget got adopted, which was less than a week ago, to programs that really should be beginning this month or next month. I think where the Lower East Side is very fortunate is that there are a number of organizations, settlement houses, and many others that have decades of experience and a deep commitment to the community that many of us did planning to operate as a contingency in the event that the city budget negotiations didn't go in a way that would allow us to support programming. And so between those two realities, the fact that a lot of established organizations did some planning, whether or not they would have the resources or not, and the fact that the budget did allow for a partial restoration of programs, I know that many of the organizations on the Lower East Side, both settlement houses and other organizations, are going to have some program offerings for young people this summer. Most of them in the form of what we're calling hybrid programs, a combination of virtual programs that are done online with some in-person activities, because we're acutely aware that young people have screen fatigue and they have a lot of social emotional challenges because of the fact that everyone has been hunkered down for several months, and they need both. They need connection to both academic and fun and recreational supports, but then they also need to get outside in ways that is safe and supervised. And that's been also another deliberation that a lot of organizations have had. You know, can young people get together safely? But I can say that from the organizations that I am aware of, and I can speak directly for Henry Street Settlement, that there is a wholesale commitment to operate 5 or 6 weeks of summer programming with some level of a hybrid, meaning 4/5 of it will be virtual or, you know, on a screen like this Zoom meeting, and then 1/5 will be in person in a range of different activities. But that was also a concern for CBOs as to whether or not they could operate safely. And we're grateful that many of us have committed to run programs that we believe are in the best interest of the young people that we serve. So as far as summer goes, for younger children, there are going to be these virtual and in-person camp offerings. But the fact is that there are also very limited resources to serve a very high number of youth. It's been an exceptionally hard budget year, as I mentioned, and the same level of resources are not there. And because of the conditions we're in, we can't serve the very, very high volumes of campers that we normally do and bring them to swimming pools and to trips and otherwise. So it's going to be a very, very different summer for our younger children and for their families. And we think it's going to be a long, hot summer, but we are grateful to have some semblance of resources to put into the community to serve these families. So that speaks somewhat to younger youth, and I can speak more about that. And when I share the information sheet with May and with Susan to distribute, you'll see the way that families and children can enroll in those programs across the Lower East Side. The second category that I'd like to give an update on is summer youth employment. You know, we all know that many households are suffering from the loss of a job or of economic instability or trauma. I'm sure we'll hear a little bit about food security because many, many households and families in the neighborhood are really experiencing acute food insecurity. So summer youth employment, whereas normally it has merit for the fact that it's the first job for many of the young people that live in our community, the fact that there's a real opportunity to learn different vocations and different careers, but equally importantly, that it's an opportunity for young people to earn some money and really help out their families and help out themselves. And in April, the Summer Youth Employment Program was canceled and also eliminated. And so we came into this budget negotiation thinking that there was not going to be any opportunity to offer summer youth employment programming. That too was restored, and much like the camp offerings, some organizations were able to prepare and hold on to staff and plan, and others were not. So similar to camp, there are a number of summer youth employment offerings in the neighborhood, albeit it is dramatically scaled down. So I can speak directly for Henry Street, where normally we would have 1,400 slots. This year we have less than 500 slots, and they are designated to very specific populations. In one case, public housing, and in another case, vulnerable youth. So one thing that we are doing is we have found additional opportunities to create summer youth employment slots for young people, where we'll be able to achieve at least 200 to 300 additional slots that are privately funded to create opportunities for young people in our community. One is going to be the distribution of PPE and information. So those young people will help pack and assemble sanitizers and mask packets. And then with adult supervision, will be at tables where they can distribute PPE to anyone in the community who needs it. That's one opportunity. the other opportunity that we have is food delivery. There's a lot of pantry operations happening, and some of them will be able to utilize young people, and we'll be able to pay them to help either pack and distribute food and earn summer dollars that way. And then the city-funded program is going to have 3 components to it. It's going to have, and it's going to be all virtual. There's an academic component, there is a civic engagement component, and then there is a vocational and career learning component, and that is 100% online. So the combination of virtual offerings and in-person offerings will provide some summer youth employment opportunities for older youth from 14 to 24. But again, just like camp, the slots and the availability are really severely diminished because of not only the dollars and the resources, but the conditions and the fact that many summer youth employment participants can't go on site to a job site like they normally would. So whereas we're grateful that in these really exceptional times that we have some offerings, we still are concerned that it's not enough of a high volume to meet the depth of need for our young people. You know, we know that, and this is where I'll transition to, you know, October or to the fall. You know, we know that community-based organizations are the relationships that carry young people through from the school year to the summer, and often that the relationships that they have with community-based organizations are through threads. Like they can change teachers from year to year, or they can change schools from year to year, but often the community-based organizations are a continuous presence for the young people. The second thing that community-based programming does is connect them to resources, whether it's eviction prevention resources or food resources or legal services that their family might need. We are often the touch point because we have a young person engaged to get those resources to the family. And then third, considering the fact that everyone's trying to recover from a very traumatic few months, you know, we know between the relationships and the resources and the recovery that we're going to need more after school programming than ever before. So when it comes to identifying budget priorities for the fall, we're hoping that even though it was a challenging summer because of the financial straits that the city faces, that if federal dollars or state dollars materialize later in the summer, that all of those funding levels can be restored so that the young people who are suffering now can be serviced well as they hopefully transition back to school, or even if they can't transition back to school, they can get those benefits that I described. So that is an overview about the camp offerings, the summer youth employment offerings, and some projection about how deeply needed after school and support programs will be needed in the fall. And I will get that information in writing to May, but I'll stop and take any questions, or if I'm asked to elaborate on anything that I covered, I'm happy to do that as well. But thank you for the opportunity to attend at your meeting and share, and I'm grateful to be here. Thank you. Was I muted that whole time?
No, no, she's,
No, I'm kidding, I'm
May's
kidding.
looking to see who's raising their hand. Which I can't do because I'm a co-host, so I'll do it physically.
I don't see any hands raised.
That's because I can't raise mine.
Oh, Naomi Pena has a hand raised, and so does Gigi, and oh, there they come, and so does Eric. Okay, so I'll just,
We
Naomi.
have to do we have to do the committee members first.
Naomi,
May, you're muted. We can't hear you.
Yeah, May, you're not calling on anybody because you're muted.
Hello. Okay, so it will be Eric Diaz, and then Naomi, and then Gigi. Eric?
Yes. Hey, how you doing, David?
Hey,
Quick
Eric, how are you?
question. Hey, man. Cornerstones. Do we know how the youth is faring this summer on the Cornerstone side of things? Any updates on your end that you may know about?
So Cornerstones was one of the programs that were funded partially. Cornerstones, Beacons, Compass, and Sonic school-based and center-based. And each provider is going to have to make a decision about whether they can deploy their staff to run basically the DYCD model. And in our case, we're going to use our Cornerstone site to execute our privately resourced model, and we may take some of the funding from DYCD to expand that. So each Cornerstones as a category were partially restored, but it's going to be provider by provider how they're operated as camps. But I know that the model that the city is putting forth is a hybrid model where some of the programming is going to be done virtually and the other is expected to happen at the Cornerstone sites.
Okay, thank you.
Naomi?
Thank you. Hey, David.
Hi, Naomi.
I thank you for joining the call. This has been one of the things that is keeping me up at night. Is our partnership with CBOs, particularly with our young people. And I'm curious, with all this talk that's going around about this fall and how that model is going to look like, has City Hall or any of the DOE folks engaged CBOs to talk about, I think the larger argument here is if we go through a hybrid model and folks have to work, what do you do with your kids? Because otherwise we're going to have a whole lot of kids in foster care because ACS will run rampant, right? So are they engaging with CBOs around this? If, for days that we're not in school or doing half days, whatever that model looks like, what are the talks like? And what advocacy do you guys meaning CBOs need around elevating those concerns, and how can the community, particularly the CEC1, help you?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think it's spot on, and it captures one of the biggest challenges that we're facing in the fall is that if it's not full time, then is it even feasible, or is it of value for households and families? And what kind of value is it for the students? So I know that we are going to, we're reaching out to Carrie, and as far as, CD1 goes, to see if like the Abron Center, because of its large square footage and the fact that we are not, doing any performances or operating any in-person classes, can be utilized as a supplemental physical location and space to extend the capacity of local schools. I will say that any conversation in that regard is so far just happening locally, that we have not been engaged by the DOE. I think that is a point of advocacy. I know we did have a conversation with DOE early on, but it was really with respect to summer and summer school and summer offerings. There's been very limited information about the fall, and we know that it's going to be here very, very quickly. So, we share the concerns that you share, and I do think that the CBOs are an asset and a willing asset to engage with schools to expand capacity. So I think that's spot on, and I know Gigi's on the line, and certainly we'll raise it at the local level, and we're going to raise it with CD1. But I think it's a great thing to get behind as a community board for sure.
Can I take a text? I need a text stop. Gigi seems to be on, but she thinks she's in the waiting room.
No, they let me back in.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
I'm back.
We're texting. I'm trying to get her back in. Okay. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
And no worries, I am watching the waiting room. So anybody who's waiting there, I'll letting them
But she
know.
was texting me saying she couldn't get in.
Gotcha. Thanks, Susan.
Gigi.
Oh, yes, thank you. I just wanted to make a clarification on David's remarks, that when he said in April that all of these programs were zeroed out, that they were zeroed out by the mayor. And when he says they were restored just a week ago, that they were restored by the city council. So I just want to get the players and the roles clear so that it's on the record.
Yeah, and that's why I thank the council and the board for all the advocacy to get these things restored up front. because it has been a back and forth. I think the more effective thing for the mayor to have done would be to get these conversations and get youth programs secure in advance of the budget so that the council didn't have to fight tooth and nail to get them restored as they did. So that's a good clarification. Thanks, Gigi.
And these kind of back and forths do have an impact on the nonprofits because it made them, you know, lay people up, bring them back, and stop these processes they should have started, you know, they should have continued in April. Paul, you have your hand up.
Yes, I do, May. Thank you. David, how are you? Thank you. I probably shouldn't say this, but I work for one of your competitors.
Not competitive.
I thought we were all in this together. I don't
We
know.
are in the same thing. We're just in a different district. My question is, though, since we are looking at our district needs for 21-22, how much of a hit did DYCD take overall, and how is it going to really affect not just Henry Street, but so many other organizations in the process as we look bigger picture, not just locally right now?
I think that's unclear. I think that you know, I know early on, you know, in the time period that some DYCD programs were zeroed out, whether it was camp or some youth employment, that the net, and it probably has greater proximity to some of the nuances around Schedule C than I do. But I know that DYCD was almost a 32%, you know, 30% hit overall. And that was one of the talking points around, you know, some of the advocacy to move funding from the police to youth programs because the budgets were disproportionately hit. And I think a lot of the advocacy done by the council and a lot of the, you know, the community-based organizations and the advocacy community helped to restore that balance a little bit. And I know I can speak for Henry Street's budget, and it's probably indicative because we're no, you know, different or, you know, we're experiencing about a 15 to 20% reduction in certain areas. Now, in Henry Street's broad range of services, like homeless services, obviously was kept generally whole. Senior services, because of the vulnerability of the senior population. I know Betsy from my team is on this call, was generally kept whole. So I think the disproportionality of the cuts hit, you know, like youth programs early on because of the reality of in-person, you know, programming and the possibility to do that. And so I think that was where the advocacy push, that just because we can't convene publicly doesn't mean that the young people don't have needs. And a lot of that wedge is what drove some of the funding to be restored. But I still think that, you know, I mean, rumor has it that the DOE has money, right? Like that a lot of the money is with the DOE, and it's how they engage with, to Naomi's point, with community-based partners to help build wraparound services is going to dictate what kind of stability we see for the students in the fall and beyond, I think.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Hey, Susan, you had a question, I know, back in the beginning.
Okay. Yes, I can't raise my hand because I'm a co-host. So I wanted to ask a few things, but first of all, it sounds like from what you just said that we should be advocating for DOE to be supplying more of the after-school and wraparound services. Is that true?
No, I think that the advocacy for DOE is for them to engage the landscape of community partners who can help them help students and families acclimate. I mean, right now I think the advocacy point is transparency in what the school year planning is, so that we can be involved and interface where it makes sense. So to me, the advocacy point is transparency and collaboration with the network of community-based providers that in most cases, you know, we run the after-school components in a lot of these schools, either on site or in center-based programs. And so we have the students in common, we have the families in common, but right now we don't have the planning or the projections in common. And so the fact that it's happening in separate lanes, I think, is the concern.
Okay, got it. So because we look at the community as a whole, I know you can only speak for Henry Street, but just for the community as a whole, do you know if in general we've lost any like after school programs? I had heard that some of the nonprofits were not going to continue programs. Is there any truth to any of that?
Not from, I think every nonprofit in the neighborhood is going through a point of reflection and looking at not just youth programs, but all their programs in terms of how they can maintain viability and how they can sustain. I know that we have not received any news of our government-funded after-school programs being structurally changed, to any degree in the fall. So I think that decisions that community-based providers are making are specific to their circumstances, but we have not heard of any categorical elimination. I think that we all are living in a world where reductions are possible because of the uncertainty, but we have not heard that anything is going to be categorically cut out or eliminated. I think organizations are making one by one decisions because some of us, put private resources into a government-funded program, or some of us have, we're spread in multiple schools and we want to consolidate resources. So I think every organization is going through this kind of period of reflection to see where they can do the best work. But I think that's coming from individual circumstances and not any categorical funding cuts.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for David I have one question, but does anyone else have questions for David about the after-school youth programs or summer programs that he talked about?
Like summer youth employment, for example, goes live today. The application goes live today for 14 to 24-year-olds, young people in that age range that are looking for a summer job. They can go on, like our Facebook page or our website, or I know Chinese American Planning Council has a summer youth employment program. There are local Grand Street Settlement, I believe, has a summer youth employment component. So many of us have those opportunities. Same holds true for the camps that we're operating. University Settlement's operating a camp model. Henry Street's operating a camp model. Grand Street, CPC operating camp models. I believe Hamilton Madison House does some summer offerings as well. So I would, and I'll try to get it as consolidated and comprehensive as possible to share with May so that she can share with the full board and therefore the community. Electronically, of course. It's hard to flyer like we normally do. That's the challenge, is to, push it out in all different mediums.
Okay, so David, I just have one question. So let's talk about next summer, not this one, but the next one, and then after that. Are there any, or think about even the way summer youth program is going to be run this summer. There's a lot more remote work and, is that something you see for next summer that summer youth employment programs should do more of or less of? And same thing for the after school programs after next summer in 2021.
I'm going to give a frustrating answer, and I think the answer is that it depends, right? I think obviously a lot depends on the conditions we're facing from a public health and safety standpoint. But then the other depends observation is, like we've seen, for example, with older youth, that there's a real uptick in participation in online learning and remote access. And there's almost deeper levels of participation because that's a world that they thrive in and that they live in. That the digital literacy and skill set of our older youth is more in line with consuming programming content and maintaining relationships in that format. So I think that in order to capitalize on that, there will be some digital online elements in our summer youth employment programming going forward for the older youth. But then the opposite holds true for the younger youth, where if you're looking at either younger youth in that spectrum of summer youth employment, like 13 to 18, or even in our camp and our after school settings, K through 5 or 6, it is really, really a hardship for younger children and students to access programming from a digital, remote standpoint. And it's also harder as community-based providers for us to get any windows into what's going on with the family. I mean, there are, Tragically, there have been circumstances where even on a Zoom screen, you can see something that warrants, some kind of intervention or contact with the parent or contact with ACS in some cases. And so we're really inhibited with the younger youth with respect to this remote platform. So I think to answer your question, May, in some cases, it's going to make sense to keep the remote component because it'll help deepen engagement and diversify engagement around with older youth. But then with the younger youth, I think that two things are necessary. One, the in-person aspect of it is critically important. But then I also think that some kind of training and support mechanisms around digital literacy for younger youth is going to have to continue to be provided. And then a third thing is access, whether it's Wi-Fi access or access to equipment and technology. I know, we operate multiple homeless shelters. The biggest obstacle was the fact that people didn't have access to the technology or to Wi-Fi. So I think broadband accessibility is another advocacy point, from a community board standpoint, because some people simply can't get online. And I know that's already kind of in the mainstream conversations around either, administration's priorities and council's priorities, that people need to have access. Otherwise, all the, technology in the world is useless to broadband technology or to Wi-Fi signals, et cetera. So I think it's a mixed bag, and that's why I say it depends, May.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, okay, great. Okay, if there are no other, it looks like there are no other questions. And so thank you, David. You're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, but you're free to go as well. And if we have, yeah, I'm sure you just want to leave. But if we have any questions, I'm sure me or Susan actually will, get in touch with you. And we look forward to any kind of handouts that you want to pass on to us.
We'll definitely follow up with an email. And, on behalf of a lot of my Settlement House colleagues and other community-based organizations, they were, whether it was, Isabel from Hamilton-Madison and Wayne and Melissa from University, everyone kind of said to say hello, and they provided some information and context about what they have going on. So I'll make sure to share that with the group so that we can distribute it and people know what's out there for our youth and our families. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
All right, so our next speaker will be, since you had mentioned homelessness, will be Raisa. Did I say your name right?
It's Raisa.
Raisa Rodriguez, and she is with the Citizens Committee for Children of New York City, and she works on their policy and advocacy. She's the Associate Executive Director of it. Okay, Raisa.
How are you all? Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to give you a sense of what I think should be key priorities in the area of family homelessness in particular. I have to tell you, I know I'm preaching to the choir, but we're dealing with quite unprecedented times. And I would say that there are several, but I'll focus on three things that I think are important priorities in the year ahead as we recover from the pandemic and the economic fallout. The first is homelessness prevention. The second is educational needs of students in temporary housing. And the third is really addressing trauma of children that have experienced so much loss, particularly those that were already in vulnerable and at-risk conditions before the pandemic. So, as you all know, I know a lot of what David mentioned. I'll reiterate, so I don't want to duplicate efforts, but this was an unprecedented budget year. We've passed the budget. I think in many ways, the city tried to do the best it could under what are very difficult fiscal context of things, if you will. In the area of homelessness prevention, while homelessness services have remained, for the most part, whole, There's very little at this point investment made or additional investments made in homelessness prevention. So we remain significantly concerned as families begin to turn to recovery, how the rent simply is going to get paid. Right now, I'm sure you're aware, there's an eviction moratorium that is set to expire, at the end of the month. And there's no clear path to get a sense of how families are going to be supported to ensure that they're able to make the rent. We got wind today that there are some efforts. Senator Schumer is introducing a bill on the federal level, looking to also instill a moratorium on evictions on the federal side. We'll see how that goes and how far it goes. So there's a lot of work to do. When we look at new data that's coming in terms of the unprecedented number of New Yorkers that are now unemployed, that have lost income because they've lost their job or have reduced work hours, it's not surprising to see and to learn that households that have experienced income loss during this pandemic are overwhelmingly households with children. And more importantly, not only are they households with children, it's households with children that were already really low income, right? So the impact of COVID, the impact of the economic fallout, it has disparate impact on several communities and households. In order to really prevent a surge in homelessness, we have to do more around homelessness prevention. And so what do I mean by homelessness prevention? Rent assistance is going to be key, right? Right now, the budget does not invest new resources. We really, really need to turn to federal advocacy to ensure that federal relief dollars support rent assistance, but it doesn't stop there. We need to make sure that both city and state leaders also allocate adequately the resources that they're getting from the federal side. We know subsidies are important and effective at reducing homelessness, right? When families are placed in permanent housing with a housing subsidy, they are significantly less likely to experience homelessness 1 year, 2 years out. And so, the key to prevention at this point, as we recover from COVID, is really rent assistance. The second area is around the educational needs of students in temporary housing. A lot of intersection here with what David covered. We remain significantly concerned about a set of students who were already so far behind even before COVID. We know that distance learning, doesn't work equally for all New Yorkers. That's households that are experiencing poverty, households that have limited space, like those of students in temporary housing, find it very difficult to meaningfully and effectively engage in distance learning. And so students in temporary housing are a key concern for us. 1 out of every 10 students in New York City's public school system experiences housing instability. And these were a set of students that were already, as I said, far behind. They have higher rates of absenteeism, of chronic absenteeism. They fare much more worse than their housed peers in standardized exams, both proficiency in math and ELA. And their graduation rates are also much more poor than their housed peers. And so this was true even before COVID. And now as we kind of turn to what the future may hold, we're really concerned about the level of learning loss that these students have endured. So the news of the school system's plan, of the city's plan to kind of create a hybrid approach in September is really concerning for students who, have very fragile housing conditions. When I got wind of the fact that parents and families were given an option for homeschooling, for 100% distance learning, if they had concerns of public health concerns, I immediately thought about families with limited space, with housing instability, with housing risks, right? Because, you know, it's the difficult choice that they have to make, right? And so I think any plan ahead is going to have to really prioritize the needs of students in temporary housing as we begin to look at what school looks like in this upcoming year. And then the third piece is, so the budget this year luckily protects funding for social workers in schools. You know, advocacy in the last year was really focused on looking at and addressing the social emotional needs of students in temporary housing. We made significant wins in ensuring that schools with high numbers of students in temporary housing have social workers. The executive budget put at risk some of that funding, and so we are appreciative of the fact that some of that funding was restored. That funding was restored and those lines are whole, but we need to have a more clear plan of how those social workers will be used in the upcoming year to really address the amount of trauma that children have faced, right? Not only from COVID, but from a lack of social connection, if you will, as schools closed. And so any plan to reopen school, whether in person or remote, must address social emotional well-being as well. So those are my three highlights of priorities. And I'd love to get a sense of folks' either comments or questions that they have related to those.
Okay, so if you have any comments or questions, please raise your hand. And as I said before, if you have comments related to the discussion, please don't put it in the chat box, but please raise your hand and, you know, talk about it, because then it'll be part of the discussion. And it's also part, you know, it gets added into the district needs. Otherwise it will be lost or possibly lost.
And
Any
May,
questions?
I will email you, May, a one-pager with these platform priorities, just so
Okay.
that you guys can have it as part of the record.
Okay, that would be wonderful. Naomi.
Thanks. I mentioned a little bit about this in the chat, and I figured I'll just say something. One of the things that has come across to light for me more is the fact that, you know, we do have homes that are single family homes, and often they're women. And even those homes that are not single family homes, when there's, you know, two partners in the home, and I've said this for a while, you know, while women have made significant amount of career growth gains over the last several decades, we're often the first ones that lose our jobs, or when the family's in crisis, women are the one that often stay home rather than figure out how to manage the crisis and your children. And often it's always the woman's responsibility. So I'm just wondering if there's any sort of top of mind of how we can support women more, or single family homes at that, because there are men who are in the same position during this crisis, because I fear that they are targets.
Sure. I mean, I think, you know, definitely all these issues are significantly interrelated. And so, you know, housing stability, you know, impacts not only health and education, but as well as other areas of social determinants of health. You know, again, as we look to what the school year is going to bring, childcare is another significant concern, right? And so in a lot of these households, with, you know, families that engage in or are in low wage jobs, there isn't an ability for remote work, right? And not only that, many households are also disproportionately workers in what we call essential workforce, right? And so they have to work. And so, you know, school is often not only a safe place for students and children to be, but often leaned on by families so that they can engage in work. And so more and more, you know, on a separate policy track, we're also looking at childcare needs as well.
All right, wonderful. Shirley.
Hi. So I guess one of the things I'm thinking about is there's been quite a flight from the public hospital system and, you know, doing educational testing and in addition, sort of how the EdPsych and the other testing is done for IEPs. There is like a lot of flurry around how is that going to happen. I know for a fact at Bellevue Hospital, the head psychologist has just left, and there is no one to do EdPsych testing in the public level for at Bellevue. And I'm imagining that it's the same at many of the other hospitals, and most of the other hospitals don't take insurance. So I want to really be mindful about how we're thinking about how we're serving our special education students, how we're doing early identification for pre-K and beyond, and then sort of how can we help to ensure that children are being appropriately tested for IEPs, are appropriately being getting hearings for IEPs, and just like how the support systems are in place for this blended learning or the online learning, or, you know, if they're in the classroom 5 days a week, what that's going to look like.
I think that's another great question. I think, you know, again, here we know that distance learning has had a significant amount of learning loss, if you will, for students with IEP, as services are not being able to be rendered in person. And not all services, depending on the age, are conducive for remote platforms. You know, we're also looking at the decreases in early intervention side, on the 0 to 3 side, and as well as the bridge between early intervention and preschool special education. There's been a significant fall off rather, in terms of cases being transitioned, right? And so we want to make sure that we address that we see how we can continue that transition seamlessly. You know, just today, I believe the chancellor talked about any student that has IEP, they'll make arrangements for in-person, you know, IEP mandated services to the best extent possible, right? So, you know, that to me still leaves a lot of questions unanswered. And again, speaks to the fact that, yes, we are the largest, you know, public school system in the nation. And we have a significant, you know, number of 1,800 schools, over 1 million students. But the reality is that, you know, those who are going to endure the most learning loss are those that already we know have the highest need. So students in temporary housing, students that have IEPs, students that are in foster care, right? And so as the city moves to plan for, you know, whatever form of opening, instruction needs to be prioritized, as well as educational supports to those who we know distance learning has not been as equitable to others.
I raised my hand again. I'm sorry. So I was the other piece I was thinking about with this is that there is not really a deep understanding about how an IEP applies to online learning, and that's been a very huge disparity. So something that might have been like a, you know, sort of simple assignment that a teacher gave just so that a student could get credit, you know, a general ed student, for an IEP student, it might be an impossible task that takes all day. So that's one piece I wanted to kind of think about, and like, can we figure out how we can address that? And then the other piece is, you know, as this dyslexia screening legislation comes up about, how are we addressing that? And then how are we just addressing dyslexia education screening in New York City as we move forward with all of this?
Did you have an answer for that, Reza?
I mean, I think they're important points. I don't have an answer in terms of how the city would address those. I think we have no short supply of issues on the education side that we need to continue to track.
Susan.
So I'm trying to figure out how to ask this. It seems to me that that this need doesn't seem to be elevated enough throughout the city. You know, it's like when SYEP was going to be canceled, everybody got together and there was this one voice, and there were meetings, the borough president had a town hall, and it was successful. And I don't feel like, you know, we have discussed in our community often that students in temporary housing and students with the special needs are our priorities because they're the most vulnerable. But is it true, or is it just my perception that this hasn't risen to the level it needs to be in the city as far as advocacy and concerns?
You know, I think I wouldn't say that it hasn't risen to the level of advocacy. That, you know, the attack on summer programs and youth programs really kind of unified the advocacy community because there was an urgency in timing, right? Because services were about to be online in a matter of weeks. On the students in temporary housing side, you know, advocacy resulted, as I mentioned, in restored funding for social workers, right? And so there has been movement to protect existing funds. The other challenge is that the impact of COVID and the economic fallout and kind of our education system going to fully being remote learning, the impact is not going to be fully known, unfortunately, until, you know, much later, right? And so I think it calls for a different tactic and strategy that really calls on long-term sustained monitoring of educational needs. And data is going to be really important in that.
Well, I hope we stay involved and, you know, can continue or, you know, help with that advocacy.
Okay, are there any other questions from committee members?
I would also say, just to add to that point in terms of the elevating of the issue. So when we went to remote learning in March, much of the advocacy for students in temporary housing was focused on equipment and technology, right? So what does it mean for a child in shelter, for instance, to engage in remote learning when there's no access to computers or other devices? And so that advocacy resulted, rightfully so, in a significant push by the administration to ensure that iPads and other devices were prioritized to students in shelter, right? And so that was an important win, but it doesn't get us far enough. We know that technology is but one piece of what we need, right? What does remote learning look like for a family of 3 or 4 in shelter where there's 2 students in one room with a parent and perhaps an even younger child? How can distance learning really take place in a meaningful and effective way? And so we've been pushing, last school year had been pushing for the DOE to open up and prioritize enrollment in their regional enrichment centers. These were DOE sites that were opened up as a way to provide childcare, mostly for and prioritizing the childcare needs of essential workers. And we had called for capacity in those buildings for students in temporary housing, right? Not because there was in-person instruction, but because at least it would provide the environment, the space that you know, that would be conducive to remote learning. And unfortunately, capacity was not opened up for students in temporary housing. And so that signals to us that we need to continue to push for whatever takes place in September, that students in temporary housing and other students with high needs are prioritized.
No, it seems like we're forced to deal with it piece by piece for each crisis instead of the city having a plan.
Sadly.
Okay. So you mentioned, so we'd also like to hear, I think if you could summarize what you think the top 3 or so, you seem, I hear at least 2 priorities, but 2, 3, 4, up to 5 priorities you think are for not this coming year, but the next year. So you mentioned, I know, prevention. I mean, you said it to me in an email and you just talked about it. What does it look like? Is that like housing court, or is it these rental assistance?
Rental assistance, yes.
And then, and just in terms of education, you talked a lot about education. So if you could elaborate on that or sort of clarify for it, and if there's any other needs that you should be. So this is for our district needs statement.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I think rent assistance is going to be a critical measure for homelessness prevention. We will undoubtedly see a significant spike in homelessness if we do not address prevention as we recover from COVID, right? Even if there's an eviction moratorium, that only gets us but so far. When that moratorium expires, households will need to figure out how to pay the rent. And so rent assistance is going to be an important priority in the long term, right? Educational needs as students in temporary housing, as I mentioned, it's going to require sustained prioritization of educational supports for students who are in temporary housing. What that looks like, time will tell, but because we don't fully know what September looks like, but any reopening of school must prioritize students in temporary housing with additional educational supports that really tries to decrease the amount of learning loss that has taken place. Because what's at risk is a widening of the achievement gap, right? And then lastly, trauma, right? Really, it's not enough to just open up schools or to have a plan in place for what a hybrid in-person and remote learning plan can look like, but we also need to incorporate, in addition to educational supports, social emotional supports, right? Where we know children are experiencing with an unprecedented amount of disturbance to their routines, right? Profound loss with household members that may have been lost to COVID, or have suffered significant illness. The stress of loss of household income also has a significant impact on children's well-being. And then lastly, not to mention the deterioration of their social networks, right? Of having interaction and relationships with peers, which is what we depend as being a key component of school life too, right? And so I think, education supports and a trauma-informed approach, if you will, as students begin to re-engage with schools is an important priority to have. And so I count those as 2.
Okay. Any other questions? Please raise your hand. Okay. Oh, and the rental assistance, is that all from the federal government, or is it supposed to come from city dollars?
Well, I mean, I think a big push needs to be on the federal advocacy side, getting federal relief dollars for homelessness prevention, but the city has to commit to allocating those resources for housing subsidies and homelessness prevention, right? So there is work to ensure that, putting in significant pressure to ensure that the city allocates those resources for homelessness prevention, specifically housing subsidies and rent assistance. On the state side also, the state has had significant opportunities that have not been taken advantage to really implement a statewide rental subsidy, which again, here would help the city enormously.
Okay, great. Okay, one last call for questions. Okay, I don't see anything. So later on, if you have any kind of materials you want to pass to us, you can send us an email. And of course, if we have any additional things that we want to clarify, we can always contact you as well.
Sounds great. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, thank you for being here.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye. All right, so next up, we have senior citizens. So we have two speakers. First, there's Marian, and I don't know if Gigi's still here. Marian Guerra from City Council member Margaret Chin's office. Margaret is the chair of the Aging Committee. So Marian has a lot of information for us, maybe some information for us regarding the budget that just passed.
I'm here to spill the tea.
And then we will also hear, after that, we'll hear from Cynthia, who is with the New York State, Lower East Side Interagency Council, and she's also the ED of Visiting Neighbors, and they provide services to seniors. So first, we will have Marian.
Hi, everybody. Marian from Margaret's office. I'll keep this brief. I know that David mentioned a little bit about senior services, given that Henry Street does provide those kinds of programming. Yeah, it was a tough budget season. I think, just to speak candidly, usually the budget negotiation team meetings are often very elusive to us as staffers. It was particularly hard on us staffers. It was definitely a lot more elusive this time around. I think a lot of the conversations that were happening where we were able to actually see some momentum on a lot of the grassroots advocates' demands happened at the very last minute. And, everybody's talking about other states, right? Other counties having these kinds of obstructionist governments. But man, if this is any indication that New York City is not completely out of the woods in terms of us needing really progressive, leaders in the administration, this is the time where I think a lot of folks woke up to that. And so yeah, with senior services, this is Councilmember Chin's bread and butter. She was part of the budget negotiating process. I think, all of you have been part of our conversations. I think every time, Margaret joins a CB3 meeting over these past few months and gives an update on where things are at in terms of, what the Department for the Aging has been doing in COVID recovery and emergency response. The updates haven't really been pretty. I think folks quickly realized that seniors were considered an afterthought, even though this was the population that was at the epicenter, literally at the epicenter across all communities, especially in working class communities of color. They were hit the hardest by this pandemic. And so I think the biggest thing was what the heck was going to happen with food insecurity. Seniors, especially low-income seniors, were really depending on their senior centers for congregate meals. That was, for a lot of our constituents, that was really the only time that they can have access to a free, nutritious meal, especially for those from immigrant communities. And at the last minute, I think, Department for the Aging eventually shifted to a grab and go. I wish David was here. I think a lot of our settlement houses and CBOs, like Henry Street, Education Alliance, were pretty much ready to go with making their own decisions to do grab and go, even without the city directive. I think they were trying their best to very carefully adhere to all of the contracting guidelines so that they, at the end of the day, they aren't penalized for stepping up to serve their members. But I think a lot of them did take the executive decision to do what was right. So that was really awesome. I think shortly after, DFDA launched its own DFDA Direct home delivered meals program. And I think immediately there were a lot of issues around that. I think a lot of it was, bureaucratic in nature. And I think for the most part, it just really goes to show how woefully underfunded that agency has always been. It's always been less than 0.5%. I know that there have been lots of conversations and more people are paying attention to ratios and percentage numbers of different agencies and how much they got from the budget and how much they were cut this year. DFDA has always stood at its best year, less than 0.5% of the entire city budget. And so I think in in large part to the advocacy that has been happening on the ground. A lot of the providers being honest and transparent about what they were going through and what they were needing was helpful to, I mean, I would say not just Councilmember Chin, but council as a whole, to understanding the urgency to fund a lot of the DIFTA programs. One of the programs I know was mentioned in your fiscal year 21 district needs assessment for senior services was NORCS. And, you know, somebody from Henry Street today, Talia, shared a really great Daily News op-ed about NORCS essentially being the future of senior care as we know it. We know what happened when Governor Cuomo issued that mandate to bring COVID affected patients into senior nursing homes. It was a dramatic impact on the folks who are already in those nursing homes, who are already medically vulnerable, medically fragile. And so what NORCS do, for those who are unfamiliar, they're naturally occurring retirement communities. We have quite a few in Lower Manhattan. I think due to the advocacy of our local electeds, Margaret and Carlina, we were able to launch new naturally occurring retirement communities in Vladeck, in Confucius Plaza, just to name a couple. So that allowed the seniors who are 80, 90, even 100 years old that have been aging in those buildings to have access to on-site services and not have to go to a long-term care facility hundreds of miles away from their family and from their communities. So, you know, NORCS was an initiative that at the end of the day was protected. There's always like a share between what the council puts in and what the administration puts in. Last year, the biggest issue was how are we going to keep nursing services at NORCS, because a lot of them were pro bono and were supported through organizations like Visiting Nurse Services Society. And due to last year's Medicaid cuts, they were not receiving the reimbursements that they were usually expecting. And so nurses were really on the chopping block way before the COVID crisis. So council was able to restore that funding through emergency funds in fiscal year 20, and thankfully council was able to restore that in fiscal year 21. Unfortunately, we didn't have additional funding to expand the NORC initiative, but hopefully one day down the road we'll be able to do that. So I'm happy to share a little bit more about other initiatives. As David mentioned, I think, you know, we're privileged to see that DIFTA hasn't taken much more of a hit than it usually does. It still is less than 0.5% of the budget. I think that any additional hit would have been just like would be ravaging to the agency and the community-based organizations that it funds. So just like going down the list, there were some reductions, and I think that there's still much more information. I know that there's still so much more about the budget that folks are really eager to analyze, but for seniors in general, there was a reduction in senior funding, in senior center funding. So we're still figuring out what exactly where that was. It was a $4 million reduction from OMB, not from the council, from OMB, from the administration. This could very well be the shift from DIFTA taking care of all of the food services to the Department of Sanitation, which ended up taking over the city's emergency food contracts at the end of the day for COVID. But we're still trying to get more information on that. There was just a small, you know, haircut reduction in the administration's funding for NYCHA senior social clubs. That was a big thing. That was a big advocacy push in fiscal year 20. There were quite a few social clubs, which are essentially NYCHA senior centers that are much smaller in scale and the programming they provide, if any. There were a lot of them that were ready to be on the chopping block and closed indefinitely. So a lot of that funding was thankfully preserved in fiscal year 21. Again, as I mentioned before, no real change in the NORCS initiative and NORCS funding. The things that we haven't seen that I know that Councilmember Chin and a lot of the senior advocates were fighting for in fiscal year 21, just given the sheer demand of all of the seniors who've been forcibly homebound, they can't go outside. And I think, you know, because of the risk of contracting the disease, on top of the folks who are already just, you know, medically homebound and don't have a home health aide, the council member was fighting for additional funding for the home delivered meals program. Colloquially, that's called Meals on Wheels. So this is for, you know, the folks who are wheelchair bound, who don't have a home health aide, who don't have somebody to care for them, who need food. So this was a great model that has been, you know, that's been around for many, many different years. It's like, it's culturally competent food. It's hot food. It also uses delivery services as a tool for constituent services. So, you know, your delivery drivers aren't just throwing food in front of your door. These are folks who were trained to be in constituent services so that they can check in on you, they can report back to case management agencies and the home community-based organization. It could have been a really excellent model for how the city handled emergency food delivery in light of this pandemic. But unfortunately, the city did not provide additional funding for it. And, you know, we've been fighting for additional state and federal funding, and you know, we're still waiting for that. And, you know, at the same time, community-based service providers were experiencing like a 20% at bare minimum increase in demand for those services. And there was a certain point, I think early last month, where, you know, the Department for the Aging gave big community-based organizations a call. I'm sure Henry Street got a call just considering the swath of constituents they serve. They were like, I don't think that we have additional funding for you to continue serving more seniors. So you can't accept any new enrollments. So, you know, that's a fight that we hope to continue in years to come, additional home delivered meals funding. There was also additional senior center funding to right size senior center budgets that was promised but was never granted. So this is essentially a new need. We consider it just because, you know, this was never put into the budget. Senior centers were expecting this. They kind of needed this additional funding. It was $10 extra million in funding for model senior center contracts so that they could pay their staff, their programming staff and their director staff a living wage. And also allow for additional programming. There are lots of big senior centers, you know, that have been operating, that, you know, that do really great innovative programming and have been lifelines to a lot of our older adults on like really minuscule budgets. And so this was the Model Senior Center Budget Program was essentially a way to fight for parity for these senior centers. And so they've been waiting for $10 million for the past couple fiscal years. We were hoping that it would come in fiscal year 21, which was the deadline the administration gave itself, but another broken promise. And hopefully, you know, folks can continue to fight for this in years to come. I'm happy to go through other different facets of your senior center ask, but I think those were the biggest things. Yeah, and nice to see Cynthia. I know last time I saw you, you know, hopefully you're feeling better. You look really great. And, you know, Cynthia and Visiting Neighbors, man, Visiting Neighbors has been neglected by the city, even though you guys have been doing the thing. You've been doing the kind of thing that now new mutual aid groups are doing. You guys are the ones that have been calling seniors who are homebound, asking if they need help with groceries. Finally, we're able to see that model expanded on a, you know, a grassroots level, but I got to give credit where credit's due. You know, Visiting Neighbors has been doing this. You guys have been the OG on this model. So, so yeah, no, I'm happy to answer any questions. You know, Gigi is also a budget pro. And yeah.
Okay, thank you, Marian. So I do see that Eric and Naomi have their hands up. But before we get to that, could we also first hear from Cynthia? And, you know, I know you have, so, you know, what you, just your thoughts on the needs now, especially in the pandemic, and since you've done so much work with the mutual aid. So we'll hear from Cynthia first, and then people can, for those of you who already have questions, if you could just remember what it is that you have or jot it down. And then after we hear from Cynthia, we can address questions to one or both of the speakers. Cynthia? Oh, you're on mute.
There we go. Okay. Hi, everybody. Miriam, thank you. The truth of the matter is it's unbelievable. It's been a whirlwind. I know there was once upon a time a life before COVID, but it's hard to imagine with all the changes that have gone on. But there have been so many, and I do want to address 4 of the top needs that we see starting now, going forward. Isolation, top of the list. This was already, as Mariam said, was a very needy population to begin with. They were very isolated. I mean, we work predominantly with the oldest old, so more than 70% of our clientele are over the age of 80. We've got a dozen hitting 100 this year, and these people depend on having connections to the outside world. And just like everyone else who was feeling it, the seniors in particular didn't have all the access. So the first thing we said is, rather than what can't we do, what can we do? And definitely phone calls. Now, many people did ask us, why don't we try virtual programming? And I heard a couple of comments tonight. It doesn't work for this population very well. Maybe for some reason, same reasons as others, but there are a lot of seniors who don't have access to computers, and if they do, the Zoom is very difficult for them. So we are teaching a few people. It's not majority. So we really need that direct contact. And seniors started getting very, very depressed. We were getting phone calls in the beginning, I'd say in March, just to show the change. In March, the calls were all about just check on me, make sure I'm not on the floor. We had seniors call in to us and say, hi, I'm okay. And then we knew if we didn't hear from them, there was an issue. By April, the calls started, I'm lonely, I'd like to talk, what's going on? And then by May, seniors were crying on our answering machine. And the phone calls were longer than the need for connectedness. One 97-year-old told us, I'm bored. I need something to engage, and I really don't have the dexterity to work on the computer or the eyesight to do puzzles. I want to talk to somebody my own age. So we matched her with a 99-year-old, and it's working great. We really need people. So I don't see this as being any different going to 2022. This is going to be a need, being able to connect people, but also having appropriate information that is correct and updated. The beginning, the seniors were getting information, like many people, that was absolutely false. And one senior called saying, should I hold my breath to see if I have COVID? I'm sure some of you have heard that in the very beginning. No, that's very dangerous. We don't do these things. So what is accurate information? How long does the COVID stay on items? And as the issues progressed, the seniors needed to stay informed. So having that information connection is very important, because that's the only way you're going to know how to deal with it. In fact, we just put out a newsletter that went out last week. Do not slow down. Do not stop using the mask. Do not stop using the sanitation spray, because it's not over. So that's the first real serious issue that has got to be addressed, senior isolation. Second one, wellness issues. During this time, people want to be doing something meaningful and also engaged in some kind of activity that makes sense. So we had a buddy system. People talked to people who needed a good energy, a positive energy, uplifting, poems, jokes, anything that engaged people, but again, not virtually. Good old-fashioned phone call and mail. We needed stamps and loads of them, because I can't even tell you how many stamps went through. Then there's the issue of exercise, going out, being unable to go out. And if you do go out, how do you go out safely? What can we do to do that? So that is going to be an issue. And safety on the streets was already a problem, let alone how do you trust someone? And it's very important that we knew who all the volunteers were that were assisting our clients. There had been some pop-up programs, and they may have been good intentioned by some good people, but if you don't know who someone is, you never know. And we wanted to make sure that not one person was going to get hurt by one of our volunteers. So training people so that they can be eyes and ears, because not always can people communicate what they're feeling, and being able to exercise. A third issue, and that is food access. Even though some seniors had food delivered, Margaret Shin, I saw her on Channel 1. She was wonderful. She even commented, not all of them were equally wonderful. Some packages didn't have protein. Some had weird things thrown in. A senior called us saying, "What is this vegetable? I don't even know what it is." And one of our volunteers looked it up for her after describing it and helped her figure out something to do with it. So shopping for people, helping them get access to the outside world and errands. Even though pharmacies said they were open, many of them were not delivering medication. They did a few, and seniors still needed their meds. And this is going to not change as we go forward. So access to food, very, very important. And then finally, and this is, a systemic issue, we heard a lot of ageism comments that were not healthy. I mean, statements like, so if a 90-year-old dies of COVID, it's not that tragic. And that's horrible, because you're disqualifying an age group. So anti-ageism is alive and well, and that is something that was probably an undercurrent that was always sort of there, because we've seen it as we've always tried to promote a better attitude towards growing older amongst the aging themselves, and as well as the population at large. But educating the public as to the importance of the roles of securing our older adults, these people who deserve to be treated with the same respect and love that you would want for anyone else. I mean, we want our seniors, if they deserve to be here, not to die of COVID, and to be able to be okay. The issues that happen for seniors are not going to change necessarily because of COVID. They'll be exacerbated by COVID. We had a client who had cancer, and she called us and she said, "I'm stage 4 cancer, and I need someone to talk about it, and I need to talk about end-of-life issues, and I need to address some things." This didn't stop because of COVID, but it made it more complicated. Issues like when you're working with somebody who's blind, how do you do a food delivery to someone who's blind, but then they don't know what the items are? But our volunteers were creative. You have to get very creative, and they put sort of unusual shapes to each of the items, cutting out, and then explained it so the star is milk, not orange juice. But these are things that are going to be alive and well, unfortunately, going forward. And we know that the COVID is only one more reason to be able to keep our people as connected as possible. It could have been Sandy, it could have been anything else, but also the population is extremely vulnerable. When people don't have all the right information too, and they panic, it's a problem. And we've had seniors who were dealing with a flu and they didn't want to go to the doctor. Okay, right, at some point probably that was better to stay out of a hospital. But then there were those who had pneumonia, who needed to go. And what happened with COVID is a lot of people who were sick from other things didn't want to go to the hospital because they were afraid. So helping discern, and that's a part of the wellness, of when it's time to go and when it's time to not, is a hard decision, and it has to be made individually. So these are going to be issues as we carry forward. So, and I want to say, Margaret Shin has been a champion for the elderly. If it wasn't for her, we probably couldn't keep our doors open. Through her support, we're still here. So we're very, very appreciative. Carlina Rivera has been a wonderful advocate and cares about the seniors, but not everyone does, and that fight is not over. So we have to remind people, if we're lucky, we'll all become one day, or stay one and stay healthy and have friends and stay connected and have people who care about you. A lot of times it's just about knowing somebody cares that can make all the difference. And a lot of our seniors wanted to give back and had offered ways to do that as well, so that they could feel valued and important too. So, and I mean, there are other issues too, you know, that are concerns, but I believe those are the top four. I need, isolation, access to food, wellness concerns, staying informed with accurate information, addressing ageism. I mean, there are also going to be issues about safety in the home, transportation, but in terms of moving forward and how much was impacted, COVID affected these things the most. And seniors, many of them lost friends. We had one senior who had an elderly husband. He's 80, she's 81. They met later in life. He fell in the home. He was healthy, but he needed to go to the hospital, got COVID, bounced around, did not make it, and she's now mourning. And that person needs as much care as anyone else. So.
Okay. Right. So,
okay.
Yeah, okay. So thank you very much. We do have the handout with the list of needs, and thank you for, pointing out to us what is, you saw that was really important. Well, your organization takes care of the very, very old in their homes. So we have people, hands raised. I think there's Eric, Carmen, and Naomi. Eric, you had your hand raised before. Do you still have a question, Eric Diaz?
I do. Thank you, May. After hearing the reports, I had a couple questions. First one is, it sounds like we need some additional funding with caseworkers to continue to reach out to those who are homebound, Cynthia, it sounds like. And what kind of budget stream should Community Board 3, when we put our budget, priorities and resolutions, is there like a certain initiative or,
Yes.
that we should be?
The Healthy Aging Initiative was eliminated.
Yes.
And we want healthy aging. There's a message in there somewhere. And it is very true when we talk about seniors sometimes being put on the back burner or being an afterthought. That was a very true statement. So healthy aging, and we do case assistance. We are like everything other. We're more like the friends of the seniors. So we're there once, if a case manager goes in and maybe oversees and then forwards on, we're the ones who then stay throughout. Like same way with visiting nurse that may go in and do an assessment and then make a recommendation and ultimately send them to us, and then we're ongoing. Once we get a client, they never go. They're with us for the time that they're with us. And we do see at least a 20% increase each year. And yet the staff and the amount of dollars we get shrinks, not increases. And we do have 2 social workers who are board members who helped out in this pandemic. I'm a psychologist by background. So when we had someone who was in emotional crisis, there were people for them to talk to. But we really could use a social worker on our staff, but we don't have the financial means to add that position.
No, I understand. So Cynthia, to cut you off, Cynthia, I'm sorry.
No, so did that answer your question?
Hello, can you hear me? Sorry. Yes,
Yeah,
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yes.
I was saying, just to focus my question a little bit, then we should include in our language a restoration of healthy aging initiative. You're saying that's
Yes.
thing to advocate.
Yes,
Okay. So
absolutely.
then the last second thing was, second question or just to the board. I know digital literacy is always an obstacle with the seniors now more than ever. But I can't help but imagine that there should be an initiative. I know the city has something called the Digital Literacy Initiative. Marion, do you know where the city is with that initiative? Because I know it can support seniors in the education of technology. And so just wanted to know if there's any update on that initiative.
Or let me get that for you in like 10 seconds. It's not under DIFTA, so I don't have the immediate answer. Hold on.
Let me see.
Okay. Was that your last question, Eric?
Yeah, man, thank you.
Okay, so while, I don't know if it's going to be 10 seconds or maybe more, but we could move on to Carmen while she's trying to get the answer. Carmen Perez? Carmen Perez, you're on mute.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. Sorry about that.
I
Still
did
learning how
that
to do
too,
all this.
so.
Hi, and thanks, Cynthia, for talking. And yeah, I certainly resonated with everything that you mentioned, being that we're going through it. First, I would certainly like to say thank you to the City Council for restoring all the North funds, but we still need more. And I think the actual ask, as far as the city budget was concerned, I think we got like 7 million, but overall we need at least 3 million more just to add on to other things that we're doing, because business as usual is no longer the case. You know, and yes, our seniors are lonely. Trust me, I get those emails and I get those phone calls. So even though we do sign them up for food and stuff like that, but it's just not the same. They want out. So there are programs out there, but we need money for them as well. Particularly to have, instead of Zoom, since most seniors are unable to have Zoom, maybe a dedicated phone line where they can just call in and they can listen to a presentation. We've begun to do that, so that it's just the simple things. And of course, the fear mongering, yes, has to stop, because it's not cool to hear, oh, well, it affects, you know, the aging population the most, and you know, and then when you go to a hospital and then you have to look at health disparities in healthcare, where if the senior goes to a hospital and they have COVID, the likely chance that, you know, depending on how busy the hospital is, that they'll get fully treated, ways it just, at least from my experience, it's not been the case. They will literally go for someone who's younger. And it's a shame, you know, for our seniors, so it leaves them very helpless. And I've gotten those fears as well. So I don't know, at this point, I think that if we're looking towards the budget, it's gonna be a little more than just 3 mil, just for the added service we're gonna need.
I agree with you, and I have to say that one of the issues we deal with in general is a lot of seniors have the white coat syndrome. They're terrified of going to a doctor in the first place. They don't want to find out what's wrong, and they want to just, you know, like stick their head in the sand. And we explain knowledge is power. The more information you have, the better. The COVID didn't help this any either, especially with all the conflicting information that went on. And even with the testing, you weren't sure how accurate these tests were either. So we really could use additional staff. We are really at a bare minimum staff doing all that we're doing. And at one point, we did have more staff, but funding got cut. And we managed to do the best we can with what we've got. And thank God for the friends we do have. But, I mean, we get borough president's funding, and that's, you know, the borough president lost her discretionary funds there, too.
Okay, so Cynthia, maybe we can later, I mean, that's an item to add on, and maybe we can work with Marion to see how much more funding is needed for this type of service. But I did want to, it's 8:21 and I did want to move on a little bit. So Susan, you have your hand up and then, so Susan first and then Naomi seems to still have her hand up, but we'll go to Susan first.
Okay, just some very specific budget questions. First of all, Marion, is like funding for visiting nurses, is that council discretionary or is that a budget line at DIFTA?
DIFTA did not fund. That was the biggest issue too for us, for council to save. Is that true, Cynthia? Is it still true that DIFTA does not baseline fund?
Well, she said visiting nurse.
Okay, I'm sorry, visiting nurse.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. The
Visiting neighbors?
Was my mistake.
Did she mean visiting neighbors?
Yes, I'm sorry.
No.
Okay.
Okay,
No.
so then, but is there any point in us advocating for that to be baselined, or is that something that's not being, that's always going to be council?
Yes.
Let's put on, I'm sorry, go ahead, Cynthia.
No, Mary,
Yes, once upon a time, we were in the DIFTA budget, and we, you know, when the funds were cut with Edwin Mendez Santiago, and not just us, but across the board, we had elder abuse prevention programs, our friendly visiting program, our intergenerational program, which talk about helping inner city youth work with older adults, completely eliminated.
I remember.
And we have been wanting to get back into the DIFTA budget for the longest time. It's been a struggle. It's like somehow once you fall off the table, I don't know, you're not invited back to the table, but yet we're the ones that they based their standards on because we were always excellent. So there's something in there, but Margaret's been working on this. It's been a tough, so yes, absolutely advocate for it, whether it happens.
Okay, so we're looking at, you know, not everything we want, but we're just looking at some specific priorities. And so what budget line, Marion, when that, you know, if we were asking for that to be baseline, what would we call that?
I think that's a good question. So right now it's visiting neighbors is funded through the senior center enhancements, council discretion. So it's like a very general pot. I don't think, was there a very specific line item, Cynthia, that you remember, or an initiative?
No, that was part of the problem. We were under 5 different lines because at once upon a time they had separate lines. I mean, they had what they called, you know, shop and escort services. I mean, it was a very distinct, and then everything got sort of changed around.
Yeah,
so,
I remember when we had all those lines. Meals on Wheels, I wasn't really clear. Is that still a program? How has that been? Is it part of the, you know, what sanitation's doing now? Is it separate?
It's separate. It's separate, and that's the biggest issue.
Separately.
Yeah.
So what is the level of, has the level of funding been cut, maintained, or?
The issue is that it hasn't moved yet, even though DIFTA is trying to torpedo through an RFP process to accept submissions from new providers and new applicants. Some private vendors have been applying, even though they have no experience or root in the communities that they're supposed to be serving. So that's really interesting. There's been no increase on HDMs, but I know that council has been fighting for this till the bitter end. I think we're waiting to see if FEMA funds come in. So I don't think that adding to funding.
Is this like a priority area that needs more funding because it's both food and you say it's like checking in on people and that kind of thing? Is this something that is a priority on funding?
Right. We asked for 26 million, which is, yes, a pie in the sky kind of request in the middle of a fiscal crisis. But yeah, it was extremely disappointing to not see any additional funding program.
After Meals on Wheels, or with Meals on Wheels, could you like say 2 other priority lines that we really need to advocate for more funding?
Yeah, just to piggyback off what Carmen said. Carmen, you've been really leading the ship on Cooper Square and Vladeck, correct? Yes. So, I mean, I think she hit the nail on the head. There's still not enough NORC funding. I think what we've
NORC funding?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been thankfully restored, saved. but it's, I mean, the status quo funding that we're getting right now is not close to enough to.
Is nurses in NORC's a special budget line, or is that within the whole NORC funding?
It's in
No,
the whole
it's
NORC
just separate. Right.
It's what?
Well, just to clarify, nurses are primarily for the big NORCs that are not necessarily council discretionary, that are funded by the state. They got state money, but
Okay.
the council discretionary NORCs, they were facing a cut in their pro bono nurse services. So from the council point of view, it's looped in with the rest of the council.
It's part of the NORC funding. Could you send us a list of all city NORCs in CB3?
Yeah.
Thank you. That was mine. Thank you.
Susan, I just wanted to add, if this might be cheating, because I sort of know I know better because I've done 9 district need statements.
Yes,
but
that's why we wanted you here.
But I'm wondering if there's a way to do a priority that sort of highlights just general food insecurity for seniors, that mentions a couple of budget lines. Because Meals on Wheels is one of them, which they've been doing great work. But what we've seen, I'll start kind of large picture and zoom in really quickly, is that citywide, around 30 to 40% of food pantries have closed since COVID. And a reason is because, one, typical pantries are come on Monday at 4 o'clock, wait on this line and pick up food and bring it back, right? So no one's during socially distant, all of that, where public transportation is difficult. Your volunteers aren't really coming out to help distribute in the same way. A lot of food pantries just decided to, and also because there was issues with transportation of food from farms. And so at first there was a lot of constriction of supply, right? So a lot of those food pantries just decided to close their doors. And what we've been seeing a lot in CB3 is that there's been these grassroots organizations that are doing sort of expanding their more informal pantries or brand new pantries that have been cropping up, very similar to, Councilmember Chin, our office started an emergency food pantry specifically serving the Lower East Side. I had to put in a plug. And they're really the ones that are, and in partnering with
Erica's smiling.
they're really the ones that have been filling the gap of what's been lost, right? And I think why it's important to mention it in CB3 is because we are such a diverse district, and Council District 1 and Community Board 3 in general, that culturally competent meals is so important, because while for some area, like other districts or council districts or community boards in the city, where you really have a more sort of homogenous cultural need, we have a very, very diverse food need, right? And we know, because seniors tell us all the time, this is not what we want. I don't know how to cook it. We're lactose intolerant. We're not going to take, milk or cheese or butter, right? And then they just throw it out. And that's a waste of kind of everything, of resources, of volunteer time, of everything that from farm all the way to getting it to their front doorstep, right? And so emergency food pantry money has really proven to be a very kind of a COVID response necessary type of issue. And we're particularly seeing that there are communities of color and pockets of low-income communities where that money is not being trickled down to, because those organizations tend to be smaller, even though they're really the ones that have been flexible to change their model and meet the needs of the communities that they serve. And that has been a really big challenge for Henry Street, for Vision Urbana, for the council member's office. And that really was the reason why we started our own pantry, because we didn't really see, we saw pockets of the community that really weren't being serviced by what was existing. So if there's a way to kind of cheat on the seniors and food
From an
access
agency
way,
though? Does that come from an agency or from city
it comes
council?
from city council.
So it's hard. I mean, if we can get food insecurity into the district needs, but for a specific priority.
But Marion, isn't there a food pantry line?
So Gigi, are you saying that there should be a smaller support for these smaller efforts as well as the Meals on Wheels and all that? So that you're saying that, are you saying that these, smaller, operations should also exist and therefore they should be supported more regularly?
Our priorities go to, we have to list what agency. That's where I'm coming. When we do our priorities, we have to list what agency we're doing this for.
What would you suggest, Marion?
Is that a Department of Health or DYCD?
Not that I'm aware of.
There are
know that.
super confusing, right? Because DSNY, Department of Sanitation, is taking control over the COVID emergency response, but there's also there's a council initiative called Emergency Food Assistance that is contracted with DSS and DSS HRA. So there are a lot of agencies that have touch points on this specific issue. But I agree, like Susan, I think like putting it into your district needs assessment, just with the understanding that this is many different agencies and many different initiatives.
I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time hearing you.
Oh, sorry. I think the idea to put this on as a part of your district needs assessment with the understanding that a number of different agencies and initiatives touch on this at the admin level and council.
So if I could put this in context, in our district needs statement, we're going to assess the need, which is food insecurity, and we're going to talk about that. Then we're going to vote on our top 25 expense priorities for the different agencies, and each one of those is going to go to an agency. Like we say, we want an increase in this budget in the NORCs, and that would go to DFTA. So I'm trying to figure out who we can ask for this money. And it doesn't sound like there's a clear answer. Maybe that's part of the problem. So maybe that's what we're going to put in our needs assessment, is that this problem that nobody's in charge of it.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm happy to write to that. Great idea.
All right. Okay, so
the other thing I wanted to mention, just because I was invited to make your life easier, but I'm going to make your lives harder. The other issue that's been getting a lot of attention and is under your committee is also more social workers in our public schools, right? That would clearly go under DOE. It's something that the council has been working on for a long time. It's actually a priority for the education chair. I think that in the upcoming year, more than ever, the mental health needs of children and sort of trauma and sort of how they're experiencing COVID, that is something that is worth considering. I know I don't think it's been on your priorities in years past, but I think, I just wanted to mention it because I think, as a social worker, I feel like there should be more social workers just in general. The world would be a better place, but particularly given COVID and children and schools, something to put on your radar.
We did actually support this ask. Actually, it was about, that one social worker per 100 students, and a social worker devoted to mental health needs. I think there was some kind of ask like 2 years ago to have that in the budget. At least one social worker per school, but one per 100 students, and only devoted to mental health needs, as opposed to the other things that social workers actually do when they're on the job. And I think that it sort of got a little funding in some schools somewhere.
Mhm.
but didn't ended up being funded citywide. So they're saying that's needed more than ever, right?
I'm just making the case for it to be considered.
And
Oh, I
we
think it
actually
is.
just met with DOE, and I think they're pretty much on the same page too.
Okay. Before I don't see any committee members' hands raised, although some had popped their faces in a little bit. But Naomi had her hand sort of up, and Naomi Pena had her hand up and down. I don't know if she still wants
Me.
to ask a question. Oh, who's that?
I'm sorry, Mace. Eric, just
Oh, Eric
can you
Diaz,
follow
yeah.
up on the digital literacy question. If Marion, if you found out where the city
Yeah.
is with
Oh, sorry, folks. I put it into the chat box. Digital inclusion and literacy is the official name of the initiative. It's still intact. It did face a reduction, but at the end of the day, it is a member designated initiative. So it's not like big groups lost a bunch of money. It's still to the discretion of each council member to designate whatever funding is going to be allocated to them, you know, and follow the rules. It's going we don't have the green light yet or the timing on what's going on with our post-adoption initiatives. I know that folks are waiting for DOVE, the domestic violence initiative, you know, support our seniors, digital literacy and inclusion. So we're still waiting for that.
Okay,
Thank you,
wonderful. Thank you. Naomi, you are on me. Oh, there you go.
Hi, I just have a quick question. It's actually for Marion or Gigi, whoever wants to take it. One of the things that I kept hearing during this crisis was the way of the food deliveries were being delivered. A lot of the drivers were taking the boxes, and they still kind of are for the most part. They're just leaving them in the lobbies of these buildings rather than bring it up to seniors' apartments, which then these seniors, they have to go downstairs to basically get their food off the floor, which I think is incredibly offensive. I know Harvey was meeting with Garcia, Commissioner Garcia, who took over this initiative, but I wanted to just ask and follow up if there's been any outcome about this, because I do know that's still happening.
Oh my God, it was completely disastrous. If you could like tune into the weekly elected officials and Commissioner Garcia meetings that happen at the end of every week, you'll hear Harvey, Gail, and like Margaret and all of the other members slam the city for just allowing this to continue. It wasn't just that, but it was also just like we could talk about it, like the two bridges congestion. A lot of it is due to the fact that the city was contracting, putting lots of money, these emergency contracts with private vendors with no experience in serving immigrant communities, older immigrant communities, and are contracting with vendors like DoorDash, who aren't doing these trainings, who aren't checking in on Mr. Smith to see whether or not he's even getting his food, or if, you know, the food's going to the right place. That, you know, it was an extremely disrespectful outcome of the fact that, you know, this was just mismanaged completely, this program, and just fumbled through, you know, throughout the past few weeks. But we were, you know, finally able to convince the city to do another RFP or RFEI, a smaller version of the RFP for emergency deliveries for Get Food NYC, specifically for seniors. So hopefully that means we're finally taking away the power from these private vendors and putting that power back into folks like Henry Street, community-based organizations with actual experience and who actually give a crap about seniors. Yeah.
Okay, great. All right. Okay, so looks like we do not have any more questions. I do not see any hands raised. So Marian, Gigi, and Cynthia, thank you very much for your presentation. If you have any other additional written information for us, please send it our way. And if we have any other questions that we need to ask, we will email them to you. Wonderful. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Marian is saying goodbye, so you're free to leave. Oh, you're welcome to stay. All right, so our, bye-bye. So our next agenda item, our next part of this is just to review a draft that was written by the office, thanks to Jim. I helped a little bit, and Susan helped a little bit, but Jim got it started. It's a draft of the education section of our district needs statement. I emailed it to you. Does everybody have it? Could you pull it out, or do I need to show it on the screen?
Well, the public won't see it, May.
Oh, okay, so I should show it, right? Or somebody should show it? Let me see. Okay, bye-bye. Let me see if I can show it. Okay.
Use your screen share.
Yeah, but I have to go look for it. I don't. Oh. Oh, Larissa, do you have it? Larissa? I have to go look for it. But Larissa, if you have it, could you share it?
Pulling it. I'm trying to pull it up as well.
Okay, we will pull it up in a second. And everyone else, you
Got a
can.
lot of windows open.
Oh. What did I say? Okay, we're still looking for it, but
I have it. I'm downloading it right now from my
okay.
email because it was like buried in my files. I'll have it up in just a second.
I can drop it. I can drop a link in the chat, or I can share it, whichever is easier.
You
And
need to
Larissa,
share.
you're downloading it.
You need to share it so the
opening up
public
right
can
now.
see it.
Yeah, if you can.
So share it. Do you want me to share it, May, or no?
Sure. Yes, that would be
Got
good.
it up, yeah.
I can't share it.
Oh,
Host
okay. Okay, so we will go get it.
I'll grab it. Don't worry. It's happening.
Or put a link in. Oh, no, don't put it.
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah,
I got it up right now. Hang on a second. I'm gonna try to share. I'm gonna find the right screen to share. Here it is. Okay, I'm sharing now. Okay, can everyone can see now?
Yep.
Great. I'll zoom in a little bit. Right. How's that?
Make
Well,
it smaller.
Smaller? Okay, sure.
Because we want to see the whole thing.
How's that?
Okay, well, we can go paragraph by paragraph.
Great.
Right, so could you just, Larissa, could you just go over it paragraph by paragraph since you actually have it in front of you?
Yeah, I can.
I mean, since you can control it.
Yeah. I'll scroll down whenever you need me to move it down.
Right, so the first section is, so this whole thing is on education. We are thinking to call this section Education and Youth because later on you will see that the services and the programs blend into each other. You know, sometimes they're funded by DOE, sometimes they're funded by DYCD, sometimes they're run by CBOs, sometimes they are run by the schools themselves. Sometimes they are for the students in that school, or it could be for students in other schools. So everything blends into one another. But right now we only have here the section that the items that we talked about last time, and they're put into the this thing. So there's an introduction, and then we talk about the priority needs in CB3, which is social workers and counselors, and then technology support. And then we started something on after-school programs, but we're not done. Yes?
Could I maybe, for a lot of people don't know what this is, put just a few sentences of context?
Oh, sure, yes.
That first of all, what we're looking at, even though we're in our lives, we're kind of focused on the immediate needs. This district needs statement is for the fiscal year starting July 2021. So this is projecting ahead. And it's supposed to be very specific. It's not a policy statement. It's assessing the needs. And from this, we will be voting on budget priorities as our next step. This is the overall assessment. But we want to keep it kind of very succinct so that we don't lose the importance. And, you know, we definitely don't want to list everything. We want to focus on the priorities. And that's it.
Right, okay, and this year as we're trying to focus the priorities on, you know, in light of COVID-19, what were, and also in light of the budget cuts. So many of the things are, you know, maybe, well, hopefully we won't have this pandemic next year, but many things may become a new normal, you know, so this is another way we can project ahead. Is there any discussion about, we don't have to have a great deal of discussion right now, but we just wanted to review and get some feedback from committee members regarding the what they see in front of them. Wait, let me,
and I can scroll back up if anybody wants to review the first page again.
Yeah, Paul has his hand up, and like I said, you can download it from your email and look at there if you have email. If not, you can, for those of you who are not members of the committee, you can look at the screen. Paul, you have your hand up.
Yes, May, so I'm just thinking, I'm looking at the section of social workers and counselors. I just wanted to see some stronger language in there. Social services are needed to support students who have been disproportionately affected. I would like to see something added of social services are needed to support students who have been disproportionately affected and will be, maybe to think more into the future for 2021, 2022, because the pandemic is still very much raging on, and who knows what more we're going to get out of this, and more loss of jobs, everything. I just, you know, instead of focusing that paragraph that looks like it's in the past, can we just make it more of a future tense kind of paragraph?
That's good. I like that.
Okay.
Just a thought.
Sounds like Paul's offering to write it.
Or maybe we could, if you have something, could we just sort of stick it in there right now and see how it looks?
Sure. I'm not the most phenomenal writer in the world, but I'll give it a shot.
But no, okay, you'll do it later, right?
Yeah,
I can do it later.
Okay.
Okay. Shirley and then Tati. Shirley.
Yeah, so I would agree with what Paul said as far as social work, and I think that we need to really prioritize the problem which will present itself of children who do not want to go back to school, and how are we handling that. So like in-home social work, I don't know how we want to pose this as part of our district needs statement, but I think it's important to note that there will be multiple children who either do not want to go to school or cannot, have so much anxiety about going back to school that there's a big issue. So that lends to the social workers and counselors. And then I would say there was another piece, and I will think about it.
Oh, so Shirley, let me interrupt you for a minute. Yeah. So we're talking about, you're saying that next year in 2021, say the fall, that there will still be kids who don't want to go to school because of this?
Absolutely.
Or parents who are, okay, I just wanted to clarify.
100%. There are going, so because there's the quote unquote choice, like where where parents can opt out of going to school, but then there will be children who their parents want to opt into going to school that will opt out of going to school because now they've been home for 5 or 6 months and they're unwilling or unable, or they have so much anxiety about going to school. So I think there needs to be some kind of thoughtfulness around in-home, in-shelter outreach to children who are having difficulty going back to school in whatever capacity. If it's 1/3, 50%, 5 days a week, whatever it is. But I think that we need to really think about really shoring up that whole idea around mental health and social workers and counselors for kids who are not going to want to present at school, even if they're, slated to go to school and there was initially no mental health problem or issue around that.
Okay.
I think it's going to be huge.
Okay, Tati.
Yeah. So also about the same paragraph, social workers and counselors, just from going to CEC meetings, I know that the problem is also just not having enough social workers, but then also having social workers who are split across multiple schools. So I wonder if there's more specific language we can use there too, just about, I don't know, the amount of social workers needed, just saying social services are needed seems a little vague to me. I'm not sure what exact specific, maybe Naomi can help us with that too. And then also earlier on, if you could scroll up to the beginning. Yeah, I wrote this down. So when we're saying the specific groups, let me try to find this. Yeah, students with special needs or in temporary housing face additional challenges. I think we're kind of missing an opportunity there too, where we should also talk about single parent families, students with caregivers who are not English speakers. There's just a lot of other challenges involved that I think we should include there to just be more specific as well. Yeah, those are my comments for now.
Okay. Yeah. Heidi?
Yeah, I was just saying the same thing. I agree with Tati that I think last year we said we had student advocates come and talk to us, and we said 1 social worker per school, and at that time we said that was what we were advocating for, but that was a low number. And so I think it is smart to say, quantify it, because it will just be broad in general and not be exactly what we need.
So we still want the 1 social worker per school, or you're saying we want more social workers per school? We should quantify it is what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And I've heard it's 1 social worker per school, not per building.
And I think when those kids from Eastside came to our school, our meeting, they said maybe 1 for every 500 students or something like that. They had a percentage that they thought was a good percentage.
It was 100.
1 for every 100. Wow, that's incredible. So LaGuardia High School has 4,000 students, and there's 1 social worker in the school. So there you go.
Okay.
I do have a hand raised still, though.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Oh, okay. Okay. First, let's go to Paul, and then back.
Shirley was up before me. She was
Okay,
up before
Shirley.
me.
Okay. Did you have anything additional?
Yeah, so mine was actually around the sort of the thinking about SYEP and like, so if we want to really think in terms of COVID and what we're doing and how things will look, I think we need to really look into investigating, are there some sort of online internships that kids can do, or some kind of SYEP that's not physical. So it's not, you know, the kids I had that were running, that were my after school counselors or my summer school counselors. But I think we need to think about language around exploring some kind of hybrid or not in person SYEP stuff, because we want to still fund it. And if it comes the case where like, oh, well, we can't fund SYEP because we can't have like summer school programs where kids and counselors are together, then we're going to kibosh the. And we fund some kind of SYEP programs that are virtual. I think it's got to be something that we do, like online. I don't know what it is, but I think we need to really think about that and consider that.
Yeah, I think the lesson we learned with SYEP was that like a lot of the providers and students themselves actually had really good ideas about how you could run an SYEP, even with the situation that we have now this summer. But I guess they weren't listened to. And then what David had said was that, you know, they didn't plan before just announcing, oh, they're going to cut it in April. And then he did say something about how there's a difference between younger and older students, like the 14 to 15 age range as opposed to the 16 and above, and how they do in terms of remote jobs, remote work. So, but yeah, we should definitely include a lot of that information since it was given to us.
I think you're getting into a lot of policy.
Oh, okay, okay. So maybe we can, maybe we need to, okay, well, yes, Susan.
First of all, I mean, we're going to be finalizing this next month, but it's not a policy thing, and how to, you know, and we will be voting on those budget priorities like SYEP and the social workers, and we can put some of that language in our budget priorities when we vote on that. But this is kind of broadly the needs, and you want to make it more specific, but not get into the details of a policy on how to implement them.
Got it. I understand that. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Heidi, did you have another question, or you just didn't put your hand down?
I forgot to put my hand down. Sorry, May.
Okay, and I lost track of everyone. Let's see. Eric Diaz.
Hi. Just wanted to talk about maybe I'm volunteering to speak to under the health component, something along the lines of food security. I'm happy to talk a little bit about that, and in it advocate for kind of what we talked about earlier about identifying agencies as part of the problem for who can handle this, but then also stating the sources that we do know food pantry comes from, the initiative like HRA with their emergency food assistance program. We know that is a city agency that does food relief support for pantries across the city. Vision Urbana is part of that. We've been for a couple of years now. And then even DYCD, I believe, has some component. But all that to say, I'm happy to volunteer to talk about, you know, put a little paragraph maybe on food security under health.
Okay, so we still need to do a whole health thing for next month. But I can look up under HRA, maybe we can't find a budget line under there.
Okay.
Okay, great. Deborah Glass. Deborah? Oh, you're on mute, Deborah.
I'm here.
Okay.
I'm here. So I just wanted to go back to the point about thinking about what Susan just said about it sounded like it was going into policy. I guess my question is, given the uncertainty around everything right now, does it not make sense to put in something that even just addresses flexibly thinking about how things are funded? I understand the point about, you know, if there isn't any in-person anything, then we run the risk of it not being addressed. So I don't know. I just wanted to go back to that for a second. So I guess I just don't see why it would be problematic to just sort of name it as being something that we should think about in a flexible way in terms of funding.
I could say that's not what this is. You can do that, and you can do it separately. And maybe that's a really important thing for the committee to take up, but it's just not part of the assessment of needs of this community, which are different kinds of needs. What you're talking about is very important, and you can do that.
Oh, okay. Susan, I think I know what you mean by how it's a policy and it should be done separately. But we can certainly say that SYEP and students still need summer jobs, right? We can say that, yes?
Yeah.
Because I heard, you know, that we shouldn't, you know, every year SYEP is always funded, but I heard someone say that the fact that it was cut so early and easily means that it could happen again if, you know. So we just need to stick it in our, we need to have it, yeah, as an important priority.
Has been one of our top priorities every year, but it's a specific budget line. But I thought we were going to, at the end where you have the programming, I thought we were going to write something about all the kind of after school and summer programming that's needed.
Yeah, we still need to do that too, yes.
Yeah.
So we got that information today.
SYEP has always been like the top 5 of our budget priorities.
Yeah. Okay. I don't see any other hands raised right now. Is there any more comments on this draft that people wish to contribute? Things that we need to put in, or if you're volunteering to help with something? So we're only still talking about this particular section, the education and youth, not any other section. Okay, I don't see anything. All right, so Larissa, you could unshare your screen. Oh, thank you. Okay, thank you. All right. Okay, so it's coming up on 9:04, but the meeting is coming to an end. Okay, the next thing is, did anyone go to any CAB meeting or CEC meeting after June 4th? Between June 4th and now? Were there any CEC meetings, Shirley and Tati?
I'll be going to the meeting.
I was unable to attend any, so yeah.
Okay.
I'll be going to the meeting on the 15th, so for next month.
All right, great. Shirley, Larissa, were there any CAB meetings?
Yes, I did attend the Gouverneur CAB meeting. Like all the other CABs, they are going to postpone election of officers due to the pandemic. It's going to happen after the summer recess.
Okay, and which CAB is that?
That's Gouverneur.
Okay, very good. Shirley, did Mount Sinai Beth Israel have a meeting of their CAB?
There have been no MSBI meetings since, I don't know, April maybe?
Okay.
So no.
All right. And I don't think there were any other CABs, right, Susan?
No.
Okay. Okay, great. Okay, so we are at the end. Oh, yeah, go ahead, Shirley.
Can I
go
ask
ahead,
something?
Susan, yeah.
Well, first of all, I just wanted to let you know on the capital priority questions we got from CEC 1 and 2, not a single one of them have been funded. So they're all game for us to vote on for capital priorities. So we still have to write up seniors, write up homeless services, write up health, and we're supposed to be finalizing this next month. So it seems like a really lot of work, and I was wondering if we got a plan on how to do that.
Okay, so right, so we are going at the calendar backwards. Okay, the entire district needs statement will be voted on at the October full board meeting, which means our section of district needs has to be voted at the October committee meeting, which is in the beginning of October. So that means next month in September, we have to have a, next of like a draft, an entire draft that the committee can look at, make any changes so that it's ready to be voted on October, in the beginning of October. So in the beginning of October, we should not be doing any major changes. We might want to just review one more time, make any, little tweaks, maybe with wording, and then we're good to go. So because if major changes are required, it means that we might have to do research, and we cannot research in October. So any kind of research or information has to be done pretty much between now and September. Is that correct, Susan?
No.
No? Okay.
We had always planned to finalize it in August. In October, we're going to be having an extremely long meeting on budget priorities, which usually takes a couple of hours. So we're not going to be able to spend any time on this in October at all. We're going to have all our capital and expense priorities. What we had said is we're not going to vote on it till October in case like there's new data or something that we want to drop in. But the original plan was to finalize it in August. And it looks like we can probably go to September, but that would be absolute final. So we really should have pretty much drafts of everything to look at, like you said, for next month, but don't count on October at all.
Okay. I mean, if we were all ready, we could also vote in September, our committee, right?
No.
No.
Well, you can, but nobody is doing that because there might be other information. It's easier.
There might be other information.
The full board is going to vote on everything together in October.
Okay.
So you can finalize it. Your committee can say, we're finalizing it, but if you might have some research or something, like you're just giving yourself another month. So I'll go to walk it back. It's like, yes, you really could vote on it if you wanted to. I don't see any advantage in doing it.
Okay. All right. So we have a health section that we're going to get more information on at the August meeting. But we have a lot of information on homelessness and on seniors that we can start writing right now. Now, well, the way we can do it is that, can we say that Jim could start something off as he did, taking things from the minutes, or would you like a committee member to do that instead?
I would, it sounded like people had some very, very specific concerns. And I think just to make sure that the members' concerns that they, are really highlighted, if they could just start that, even if it's a, not a final draft, but if they could just write something, something like, I know some of the wording that Paul used sounded really good. So why not get that down? And then we could put it all together and kind of put it in one voice. Would that be possible?
Okay, so yeah, I mean, for all of you who had specific suggestions, could you just write something down quick? Don't edit the current document, just write down what you want to write down. Because this is different in that we are not really working off on editing last year's document. sometimes it's just better to start fresh and write down what you think is important. And then they should, and then they should send it to someone where it can be consolidated, right?
So I'm wondering if it might be easier, since people were talking about where things should be inserted, maybe if they did a track changes, just send us a track change and, with their wording and where they want it inserted, and then we can consolidate all that. Would that be possible?
Okay, so for those of you who have changes, which way? Can you just insert it into the document?
Yeah, if they can do track changes, on their copy of the document, just do your track changes and send them to me and we'll put it together. And that way we'll be sure and have, the things you're very specific about.
Okay, so at this meeting, I recall that, who were the ones who had specific suggestions? Paul, Eric,
Tati,
Carmen, did you have something? Shirley?
Shirley did.
Heidi?
Yes, I did. Around SYEP and other things, yes.
Okay, so let me go backwards. Paul, this is for the minutes. What did you say that you have a specific suggestion on?
I just wanted to make the.
Or I'm sorry, before we go on into that, Thomas, did you, when people were talking about their suggestions, did you have that already down? And if so, could you just read it off to remind everyone what they had volunteered for?
Well, I know Paul spoke about the wording regarding social workers.
Right.
Lady mentioned about having social workers a set number. And then I think we spoke about having at least one social worker per 100 students. And I know there's more. Those are the two big ones that stuck out.
Carmen, did you have something specific you wanted to add to district needs? Eric Diaz, I clearly remembered you said you wanted to write something.
That was for the health section.
I had
food insecurity for health section.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nursing.
Carmen, nursing?
Yes.
Nursing in the senior section, right?
Yes.
Is that in Norks? Is that it?
That would be for all senior programs, but North can definitely issue as well.
So you'll write that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have the piece actually. I could just insert it.
We actually, there's nothing to insert. We haven't gotten to the seniors yet.
Got it.
But you should, so maybe you can write it and we'll put it into the thing we're creating.
Okay.
Figure out how to do that.
Yeah, so if you're inserting something, you should, if it's on a section that we didn't do yet, you can insert it in the district needs statement that we voted on last year. If you don't know where to insert it, just write it down and send it to us. Tati, it was about education and schools, yes? And
Yeah.
Shirley as well, and social workers.
Yeah, and then I had some just, I guess education specific stuff.
Okay.
So
All right, so everyone has a section now. We need a deadline. Well, it shouldn't take that long, like next week, right?
Yes.
Okay, so the minutes will go out, in a week or less. But you all know your assignments. You don't have to wait for it to get the minutes. You can just start writing and send it to us with it by next Thursday. How does that sound? I see some yes. I see a lot of nodding heads. So I take that to be a yes. Okay, so these sections that people are writing will be due next Thursday, July 16. you can email them to me and Susan.
Okay, so for seniors and health particularly, we don't have anything new. I don't know if you want to, it seems to me it should be very different from last year, but we don't have anything to base it on. You know, there's, you know, we haven't had speakers on this, you know.
Are you talking about seniors or health?
Both. They're both sections that we, well, health we haven't had speakers on, seniors we have actually. We just don't have a base. You want us to just go into last year's senior section and use that as a base to rewrite, May?
Yeah, we could use that as a base and then also utilize the information that we received today.
Right. Okay, so seniors is sort of taken care of. Health seems to me should be drastically changed, but we really have nothing for that to base it on.
Okay. So can we, it wouldn't be too late if we got speakers for August to help us with that, right?
It could you suggest?
I don't have any particular suggestions right now. Committee members, do you have any suggestions or?
Yes.
Yes, Carmen?
CPHS, because they've been really working on this throughout the whole COVID.
Who are they?
Anthony Feliciano.
Could we get someone that could deal with like maybe health and hospitals? Also, I'm saying in addition.
Well, he's been working on an initiative right now with just getting funding for nursing, because it's been lax. So he can certainly speak to that, and he can also speak to what's going on, you know, with the healthcare system in general. They are working on a campaign right now regarding healthcare disparities.
It's going to be very policy oriented and not kind of assessment of our district needs. It's going to be very he's looking at policy.
Yeah, it would be good to have a little bit more, be a little bit more needs oriented, just for our purposes. I think the policies he's proposing are great, but it might not be quite helpful to the statement we're doing right now.
If we could, you know, I think we have a lot of needs in like in health and hospitals and, you know, other our community clinics and that kind of thing.
Shirley, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I don't want to throw a monkey wrench in everything, and I will do all of the work on this, but I feel like this, with COVID and the new, like the way that the schools are arranged, this is something I wrote to you in an email. I'll do the work on it and I'll write it up, but I feel like this is the perfect opportunity for us to continue to advocate for a new K-8 building at Essex Crossing, because simply for the space, the needed space around, you know, if schools are at 1/3 or 50% capacity, but then there's kids with IEPs that need to go 5 days a week, they're going to need sites to go to where they're serviced 5 days a week, and that won't really fit with the 1/3 or 50%. I'm fine to draft a proposal around the continued advocacy for Essex Crossing as a school, but I think it's a really, really important thing right now, especially. Like, this is like a great opening for why we need space. So
when would the school be built? If we started advocating for it now, when would it be built?
Well, I don't know. I mean, this is our thing where we've been working on this for a while, but you know, I think Margaret, when I spoke to Margaret's office when I was at the Bleecker Street school meeting for the dyslexia, I mean, it could even be a dyslexia school. I'm fine with that. That would be great. But when I was at the meeting around the Bleecker Street school, we spoke about how this would be her next project, and so I think it's around our, you know, what is School Construction Authority doing, you know, I mean, it's all of those pieces that we've always had in place, but I think it's a perfect opportunity for us to advocate for an actual physical site. And we have a reason. It's not about enrollment anymore. Like now it's about actual capacity and capacity in the schools that we have. And we don't have capacity in the schools that we have in order to socially distance and fulfill IEPs and fulfill XYZ. So I'm happy to write something for that, but I think it's an important thing to think about.
Okay, so why don't, so that's, okay, let's, you know, we were supposed to follow up with Margaret's office quite some time before all this happened. So I think that's something, I haven't talked to Gigi or anybody about it, but I don't know if you have, Susan, and it seems like Shirley, you have a little bit, but we could we follow up with this, about them with this on it? So this is not part of district needs, but it's a separate agenda item for our committee. Does that sound?
What we were really needing to do, and we still really need to do this, is to get an extension. We only have that land for what is it, like 2 more years? What we really need to do is to get an extension and a hold on that land, or we'll never have anything.
Right,
Because
so that's
at this point, even if they said you could have a school, we wouldn't have the land in time.
Yeah, so we still need to do that, but I think that was one of the things that we were going to follow up with Margaret on anyway, right?
Right. So we need, what we need to do is to get an extension on holding that land for school.
Okay, so let's get back to, so we'll do that, but let's get back to the district needs statement. We were just talking about health and what kind of speakers that we could invite for health. I see Deborah's hand raised.
Yeah, if we're heading back to the district needs statement, I guess my question related to, didn't we write a resolution already about, or didn't we start doing work on that letter and so it didn't go out? I thought we voted on a resolution.
No, it went out.
So, okay, so that's what
we just need to
So yeah, right. So the letter went out, and then this pandemic happened, and well, you know, but now we still can follow up.
So yeah,
I just couldn't remember whether it had gone out or whether we were just talking
a while ago. Yeah. Can I say on that, just, you know, looking at what we've been through, I think, you know, capacity and planning in the city, and Ricky can maybe help me here, capacity in health and hospitals and in our community clinics should be something we're looking at, and planning. Does that sound, Ricky, does that sound off or no?
No, yeah, that sounds correct. Like as far as their capabilities for emergency preparedness when something like this happens. To give some context to the folks in the committee, I worked at the health department for 5 years, and a question that I had brought up is that, you know, the health department, they actually keep a stockpile of PPE generally used to support the healthcare system. I think right before I left in February, they had, I think, about 10 million masks. These are not N95s, these are just regular surgical masks in stock, but they were meant specifically for the support for the healthcare system. My curiosity is that, did that actually get out to healthcare workers? Are they able to replenish? Do they have funds to be able to replenish based on local, state, and federal funding as well too? So if you're looking for a potential speaker to come in to talk about overall emergency health preparedness, there is an Office of Emergency Preparedness and Response within the health department, the New York City Health Department. That could be somebody that you can pose some questions to or give a topic to. The other suggestion I was going to make, and I had talked to Susan and May about this as well too, is health equity. We've talked about how communities of color have always been impacted just day-to-day health disparities, but now with something like a pandemic, you see these health impacts kind of exponential, where folks of color are either getting more sicker or dying from it than versus other populations as well too. I think the the issue with that is that they would have somebody from their health equity team come, but it would be more policy, less so, because they have focuses within the city where there's always been disparate health needs, but that could be a potential topic as well too.
What about from like one of our clinics that talk about the health inequities and planning, from one of our community clinics? So, Ricky, anyone from the city is going to say everything's wonderful, right?
Of course.
Yes. So, as you recall, a couple of 3 years ago or so, we had that panel of federally qualified healthcare centers. We could invite some of those those clinics to come back and talk to us. Maybe one from, and we could also invite Gouverneur Hospital, perhaps, because they are an HHC hospital, so they know a lot about the needs and of their patients.
So it sounds like, and also just to throw out there, Carlina's head of the Health and Hospital Committee.
Oh, okay.
So you have a wide range there. Let me know who you want.
All right. Okay, we do have a wide range, and it would also be good to get, there's a wide range, but we can also make sure that we get some provider that represents the 3 different areas, well, the 2 areas mainly, the Lower East Side and the Chinatown side. And I think there usually is not one provider, perhaps except for Gouverneur, that can sort of, encompass all that. So we're talking about the smaller clinics, we would have to have at least 2, one from each side. Does that sound right?
Yeah, maybe a Betances on the Lower East Side, and then I guess Charles B. Wang.
Yeah.
Chinatown.
There's those 2 good ones.
Yep.
Okay.
So, Eric, do you know someone at Betances to invite?
Oh yeah, sure. I know the ED there and a few workers. You want me to invite them for? Wait, what do you want me to do with them?
May, how do you want to handle it? Do you want Eric to give you the name? You want him to do it? What do you want? If he gives it to you, you can kind of give them direction on what to present.
Yeah, you can give me their name, because we do give them direction on what to present.
Okay, great. I'll send that to you May tomorrow.
Okay, and then we will mention that you had introduced.
Should we get someone from Carlina's office to talk about the health and hospital overall, or no?
Are they going to talk a lot about policy or needs?
No, she's the head of the committee, so it'd be what they've been, fighting for as far as funding and that kind of thing.
Oh, okay. More of the funding gained or lost.
Budget and need.
Okay. Do we need someone from a health and hospitals like Gouverneur, or are the 2 clinics enough? What does everyone think? We're looking at 3 speakers right now already.
Nobody has an opinion.
Oh, Deborah. Did you raise your hand, Deborah, or you never?
I did. I'm not sure when I should ask the question. I know that you're thinking about speakers for one particular section. I was just looking through last year's district needs statement. If we were thinking about things to address this year that we addressed last year, are we not mentioning anything at all about nursing homes? And just curious about that.
What were you thinking of nursing homes? I mean, we don't have that. I mean, it's not our.
We don't.
It's like we don't have any nursing homes to speak of, or hardly any. So then but we do need them. So yes. What are you thinking?
We need nursing homes. That's what I'm thinking.
You should do a little research on it, like how much we've lost and.
Right. Well, that's all. The losses are still there. The data is still, I think, the same from last year. I don't know if there's been any change since a year ago.
Can we pick up what we had last year?
Well, I'm just looking at it now, so it would take some looking to see if there were any additional losses, which I don't think there were. There are still the same two places. That little one that's on Bialystoker Place, I think, and Gouverneur. So I don't know that those statistics have changed. But as seniors are aging, continuing to age, that need has not gone away.
I think Gouverneur has gained a significant number of beds, but that's the only change, I think.
Significant, as in like for long-term care, for what?
But that's easily, we can easily get that information.
Okay. And then I know that COVID happened, but was there any, I know that you all were having conversations about Confucius Plaza as a possible nursing home. Is there any follow-up on that?
We've done nothing but COVID in the last 3 months, to be honest.
And we haven't heard from them at all. I mean, they're dealing with COVID too. I mean, just the rate, the emergency stuff. So, at some point, that's like another advocacy thing to follow up on, I suppose. But luckily, it's been very quiet over here.
I was going to say, it's been about getting food to people.
I didn't hear you, Susan, because I didn't hear you, Susan. Repeat what you said.
I said the focus in the last few months has been around things like getting food to people, and it stopped almost everything else,
including at Confucius. Okay. All right. So we have we have our list of things to do. Is there anything else that we need to do, Susan, regarding the district needs statement that we need to do for next month?
I hope not.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Okay.
We have our hands full.
Yes. All right. So are we ready for the last agenda item to vote to adjourn?
I vote to adjourn.
Okay. Okay. So Thomas.
Hey,
Oh, Shirley. Shirley, did you have something to say?
So someone just did me and said that they had signed up to speak at the beginning, but didn't get a chance. Is there a reason for that, or did she do it incorrectly? Just wondering. Her name was Charity Burke, and she said that she had signed up at the beginning to speak. So, I mean, obviously we're like at the very end of our meeting, but I just wanted to see if we could inform her the process for speaking. It just texted me that she had wanted to speak.
Okay, okay, I saw, there was a Charity Burke who just signed in on in the chat box. And I think she just said her name and that she's a resident. But that doesn't mean that you want to speak. That's just okay, so when you sign in like that, it's just like an attendance sheet.
Great,
but
so if you could just inform her of the process for the future, because
okay, so Charity is still here, it seems.
Yeah.
Oh, there she is. Okay, so
yeah, hi.
So Charity, when you okay, we are ending the meeting soon, but we do have a few more minutes. So could you just?
I'll be quick.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Shirley. Where I'm up in the Hudson Valley. And this has been fascinating. I'm new to activism, so thank you very much, y'all. What I'm trying to do is sort of get grassroots movements as effectively policy directed as possible. I've lived in the city for a while, so I also like I love the city. So I was going to bring up cops in schools. I've been doing a lot of marching and that sort of thing for Black Lives Matter. So if anyone can direct me to good resources in the Hudson Valley, people who are writing policy for schools, especially that was what I was going to speak on tonight. I wasn't aware I was going to be speaking to people who were sort of already allies of mine. I had no idea who was on the council. So I'm so tired. I don't think I'll do this. I will request that if anyone has like contacts up in the Hudson Valley who might know good addresses to send Black Lives Matter messages to effectively, people who will listen to public pressure, that sort of thing. Please contact me, and I'll text my email.
Okay,
and
so
also,
Charity, what you can do is you can read your email to us, or put it in the
I
chat
can do
box.
that.
And those who have like information for you, particularly about Black Lives Matter, maybe policing in schools, contacts in the Hudson Valley, can contact you. Is that your request?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. So
I also wanted to make a suggestion, just on behalf of all the people who have been out there like marching for. I'm sure some of you all have, or all of you all have. I honestly don't know. I'm very new to this. It's been very, very interesting to listen to y'all talk. People who actually have your hands on policy.
okay, I'm gonna interrupt you again.
Yeah.
Are you just temporarily there, or are you a resident here?
No, I lived in the city from like 2001 to 2007.
Okay.
So it's been a while. I've been in the Hudson Valley in London and back.
Oh, okay.
So I don't live on the Lower East Side.
Okay, I got you mixed up with someone else who identified themselves as being in the East Village. So so we'll do that. Just put your information in the, so our committee is, it's a local community board, so we're very localized and focused on the village, on the neighborhood that we are in. But let me say, okay, please put your information in the chat box. And then for those of you who have resources for her in the Hudson Valley, please feel free to contact her. Okay, and then you can also talk to them, about any other information that you might need from them.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Wonderful. Okay. It was very nice to hear from you, Charity.
No, it was really interesting to listen to the process.
Okay, wonderful. Okay,
so thank you.
Are we ready for the final vote? Yes, we are. Thomas?
Okay, this is our roll call for the final vote. May?
Yes.
Larissa?
Yes.
There you go. David?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes. Yes.
Shirley?
Yes.
Deborah?
Yes.
Tatiana?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Heidi?
Yes.
Ricky?
Yes.
Ricky, and Carmen Perez?
Yes.
Okay.
Is there anyone else whose name was not called? Committee members? Great. So we are adjourned. Have a nice night. Goodbye.
All right.
Bye, everybody. Thanks, May.
Bye-bye. Okay. See you soon.